Good evening. It's 10:30 on a Friday evening, and I know a lot of you have a lot of other exciting things to do. But from this week onwards, yours truly, Manzoor Nadir, will be here with a program called Hold No Bars. If operator could put an S onto the bar and make it Hold No Bars. And I'm going to be with you every Friday evening at 10:30 to 11:30 with a topical issue of the week, and we're going to have a very interactive program, calling in and sharing your views. There are going to be a few numbers that you will see on the screen. They will reflect the landlines in front of me, but operator will also put up a cell number 681-9312, and you can also, if you don't want to talk, you can WhatsApp me your views and I will read them out. So 681-9312, it's the cell phone, and you can WhatsApp messages. You can call on that too if the two lines are busy. But from this week, it's Hold No Bars with Manzoor Nadir. And why hold no bars? One of the issues we have is to stimulate persons' views. You know, we have come through a period where we were controlled in terms of our thinking and what we were able to say. That control with respect to our voicing of our views was because we had so much of intimidation, coercion, and you call bullying by a government of the past. That government was from 1964 to 1992, when we were very limited in a number of things, but more particularly the PNC regime of that time. And I say regime because from 1968 to 1992, we did not have free and fair elections. So hold no bars will hold no bars. The only issue we're going to be careful with is we have to stay within some confines of the rules of the National Broadcasting Authority, which is the agency that watches what is played or said on TV. But even in that regard, we're going to have to break some new grounds. Because, you know, the difference between the Americans or the American society and the British society is that America allows freedom of expression. What we may consider profanity is ruled in the United States as freedom of expression and not profanity. But we still got some old remnants. We still have censorship laws on the books for films, and you're not supposed to show certain types of pictures on TV, or sorry, I should say on TV, but in the cinemas. And so we still have a lot of those censorship standards existing. And the Broadcasting Authority is there, and they also speak to certain things, like they have banned some words that on radio and television you can use. I don't know how we will deal with cricket balls, but the last part of the two words I just mentioned in some instances is banned. And so seed and nuts and so will probably be banned. So we have to break a new ground. Listen, communicating is one thing. Being obscene is another. And sometimes there's a fine line. When Elvis Presley first came out and he started gyrating his hips, he was seen as vulgar. Michael Jackson holding his parts on stage was seen as not so vulgar, right? And what we will have is a lot of interaction. And we have a first person on Facebook says, bag your face. Hey, hold no bars, you can say what you want. And you got no shame. So that was the first WhatsApp message for the evening. And the first message, and I'll say to that person, that's a very, very encouraging start. So hold no bars is going to be just that. Hold no bars. And we will allow a lot of interaction. But tonight, holding no bars, I want to deal with mathematics. And I want to deal with the 34 seat majority that the appeal court in a 2-1 decision ruled last Friday, just a week ago. Now, there are some rules of the game with respect to matters which go to court, and you're not supposed to discuss in public the merits of the case. You can report the arguments that attorneys make in court as they present the different sides of the case. But for a person to discuss the case in public, we still follow the old British rule that it's not supposed to happen. There's a fancy word for it. But hold no bars ain't going to deal with fancy words. We want you to say it as you see it. And I will, and MTV will try to control so that we don't get the issues from the National Broadcasting Authority, right? So we're going to talk about this majority that the two judges of the appeal court said must be, in the case of the parliament, an absolute majority should be 34. Now, I want to share with you some of my experiences with respect to majority. And I'm not a mathematician, and I am not versed in English language either. Coming from, as some people say, the ghetto, and from very, very humble backgrounds, I understand the simpleness of the English language. But the English language is also very complex because, let's say the simple word second, S-E-C-O-N-D, it has so many different meanings. A second could be a unit of time, 60 seconds equaling a minute. A second could be after first. A second could be a person when you go in a duel. Long ago they used to have duels, gentlemen settle differences by duel to the death, sword fencing and pistol, and the person who would be in your corner would be a second. So it could be a confusing thing. So let's deal with this ruling last week. And for me, it is fair game. While you can't discuss the merit of the case, I haven't heard that there is any rule saying a person can't differ from a judge with respect to a ruling. We should respect rulings, but it doesn't mean we have to accept rulings as gospel. We do not have to accept rulings as gospel. We can differ with respect to court rulings. So what happened last week, we all know. But to refresh some of us who may have missed it, two judges from the appeal court, they ruled that for the no confidence motion, which was brought by His Excellency Dr. Barrett Jagdeo and debated on the 21st of March 2018, supported by 32 members of the People's Progressive Party Civic and one member from the Alliance of Change, Mr. Charan Das, giving a support of 33 members of parliament as against 22 from the other AFC members and the APNU members. And so the speaker ruled that the motion was carried. The motion was carried 33 to 32 in favor of the opposition. So the Speaker of the National Assembly signed off on that. The government went back to Parliament later, sometime in January, I think it was January the 5th, and they asked the Speaker to reverse the decision. The government asked the Speaker to reverse the decision. The Speaker did not. In fact, the Speaker said, this matter should be deliberated by the court for future motions such as this. For future. The Speaker, Dr. Barton Scotland, he said, for the future. Nevertheless, the government went to court, and all the rest is history. So at the appeal court level, the government got a ruling in its favor. 34 says 2 judges as against 31. So my friend who said that we should bag our face is back on WhatsApp, and he says, you want to change what the court says? Watch out. So, and we're going to get these kinds of threats, right? The matter of changing the decision of a lower court is a higher court. And that matter went to the Caribbean Court of Justice. That's the highest court. So my friend, just as the government had a right to appeal the Chief Justice's decision to the Court of Appeal in Guyana, anyone has a right, if they are not satisfied at the Court of Appeal stage, to go higher. That's a right. That's the process which we have. But I want to deal with majority. I've been around parliamentarians from 1980. That's a long time, almost 4 decades, 40 years. Half of the country was not born. Half of the people of Guyana were not born when I started my political or public life, 1980. My first election was in 1980 elections. Good? But I've been around parliamentarians, I've been around the parliamentary system since then. In fact, if I go back a little bit earlier, I got my little feet wet in the parliamentary system when I was studying in Canada. And I think it was around 1978, the government of Canada started broadcasting on television, not live, but delayed broadcast, the sessions of Parliament. And it was good to look at people, Joe Clark, a former Prime Minister, Dan Mazinkowski, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And these are really big names, icons in parliamentary democracy. I've also had the opportunity to walk with and to sit with and to listen to persons like Jainarain Singh Sr., the first General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party in the 50s. I've had the opportunity to listen to parliamentarians from Bermuda right down to Trinidad and Tobago, and even hopping across the Belize. So, while I might not be an expert, and I'm not the brightest person in the country, in fact, I consider myself average, common, but from all these years, you will pick up something. As the old saying goes, experience teaches wisdom. So you can have wise people, but if they don't have the experience, they can learn something from the experienced people. And so, you can interrupt me anytime. We're talking tonight about the majority. I'm just giving you a background on myself and why I consider myself qualified to speak on what is a parliamentary majority. And a parliamentary majority says that X is greater than Y and a motion is passed. It never defined, only in two instances, I should say, where a majority is defined by the Constitution, two cases. Everything else is greater than. There's nothing about a majority of one or a majority of two or a majority of three. It's always greater than. And I'll tell you these two cases. But anyone looking at those numbers on the screen, we have 233-2459 and 501-0617, along with the 681-9312. You can WhatsApp me on that, or you can call on that. And the lines, you can interrupt anytime and share your view. Tonight, you're sharing your view on what is this parliamentary majority. Giving a little background with respect to the decision last week of the Appeal Court of Guyana. Hold No Bars will be a weekly program. Hold No Bars, a weekly program. Yours truly will be the host. I know it's the late hour, but you know what? So many persons are anxious, eager for information, to hear other views, to understand, to learn, to share their views and to educate others. And so the program will generate that kind of information flow between us and you and among all the listeners and the viewers. And in that way, all of us could raise the level or levels of our consciousness. We have somebody online. Let me take this person. Hi, good evening. You're on Hold No Bars. Go ahead.
Yeah. In connection with this no confidence motion club, all right?
Right.
Now you tell me, the very same people that take the opportunity to say this guy was illegal because he have
Go ahead.
dual citizenship, all right? And it is illegal. How ironic could it be to stand up today on TV and said they're not illegal, but yet for all, there's the government and they going into parliament. Tell me to God. Now, you could talk until you drop down there. I'm not disrespecting you of any kind. But I can remember back in the days when this guy just said, Leslie Ransami, you cannot teach old dogs new tricks. Right? I live today to see what he was talking about. Alright? Now, apart from this thing, this no confidence and what have you, my brother, these guys promise Guyanese a better life. Right? I know we're in one side of the shoe. I know put my foot in the cane, cut the shoe. Okay? To know how they were feeling when bread was taken away from out of their mouth. I'm a taxi driver for 31 years. The only car park that's registered, that's the Eastbound car park there. Alright? These men take this park away. 300 odd drivers to accommodate 87 vendors. Okay? 8 months now. I haven't torn in the straw. Now they put us in the lion's den because they put us on Cornell Street. Out of 60 cars, only about 7 or 8 could fit there. You have Timeri car park, bus park.
Right.
On the eastern side. On the western side of the road, they have the vendors and they put couple cars there. Now we can't make money to put food on our table for our family or pay our bills. Right? We have to find money to the police will lamp on you. You get locked up, you even have money to pay the court or even bribe the police if we have to go that far. Now, tell me how they intend for us to survive. Right? Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot to that caller coming through tonight. I asked the operator to check on the landline because he came through on the cell phone. But here, this is the hardship. We were promised a better life. These are 300 hire car drivers. And listen, since I was a child in Hawk Street or Boys Town, we would go at Sussex and Savon Street, and we would stand there and get a short drop to take us to the market. Good. If you didn't have money, of course, you walked. But that's how, I think it used to be 5 cents or 10 cents during my time. And they were there, as he said, for donkey years. And were removed to put vendors in the spot. That's the spot where Tiger in the Jungle was. And now they're at the back of the old Co-op Bank in Cornhill Street, competing with 2 different routes of minibuses on both sides. In fact, I had the opportunity, caller, and thanks for calling, of going through the area last week because somebody else had raised this with me privately. So I said, let me go around and see what's happening. So he says, out of 300 up persons, you have a handful now being able to ply the trade. And it's difficult, 40 odd years a taxi driver. I guess he should be my age, and I probably know him, right? So tonight we're dealing with this majority also, and any other issue you want to raise, whether the promises that were made to the electorate in 2015 by the coalition and how things have panned out so far. But this program will come to you every week. Hold no bars. It's your program, and you will have the opportunity of sharing your views. We're not going to make it a program where I will try and come out and fix issues. We want to air issues so that eventually those in authority, whoever they are, it will even be us, to deal with. But tonight we're coming back to this issue of a parliamentary majority. I also want to give you a little background.
Enter remote access code.
Right? Sorry, line. The operator may have to help me out with the lines here. So I look and see when the lines are buzzing, and then I will answer. So, okay, let me keep. It rings one time and cuts off. That's a cell phone. So keep trying, and we'll get this going pretty good, right? We have, hey, good night. I think that what you're doing is good for open discussion. Thank you very much for that WhatsApp caller. Hi, good evening. Go ahead.
Yeah, man, I'm not a politician, man.
Uh-huh.
I love to keep up with current affairs. Now, a few questions I would like to ask. There's no confidence thing, right?
Go ahead.
To my knowledge, 33 is higher than 32. So
Right.
I'm not really understanding that well. That's
Mhm.
one. And two, coming a little off from that, these politicians, right, like okay, the opposition and also the government side,
Mhm.
everybody promised us stuff. They promised us things and promised to give, and we got a lot of promises,
Mm-hmm.
right? And unfortunately, much of that weren't really manifested. In fact, I went to a certain person on a certain place in the city to get a job, and he is actually my father's family. He's a government man, and he told me that he don't speak to people on those days. And the other thing too that I don't appreciate as a Guyanese is, sometimes these politicians going on television and some of the things that they might be saying,
Mm-hmm.
right? Guyanese don't take them well. It's like if, some people get the impression as though, that people are trying to instigate, instigate certain things that we get saying stuff like, you got to be careful because, people are with election and, things like that. I'm not a politician by any means, but, not being biased, and I'm just speaking honestly. So that's my little contribution, Mr. Manzoor.
Great. Thanks. And that's why we say one of the fundamental principles of a democracy is free and fair elections at definite intervals. Hi, good evening. You're on the air with a big question. You're gonna have to lower the volume on the TV.
Yes, yes. Them two, judge, what judge is the case, right? At the appeal court. You with me?
I'm listening.
Enable remote access
Them two
code.
judges, the appeal court. Them should go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
Those people supposed to go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
They have no right for that, but because judge,
Mm-hmm.
you tell one child, 32 and 1.33 instead of 1. Or if for one time, if you walk up the just spot or walk up spot, they said 22.5 for the half.
Mm-hmm.
The half, the thing, 33 is the biggest number. It is absolute or absolute there.
Mm-hmm.
32 is the biggest number there. So then two judge, I gotta take them and stand back out of school.
Mm-hmm.
You hear what I said?
Gotcha. Okay, thanks a lot. I agree with you. They erred. Okay, the person just talked about the two judges, and there is another WhatsApp message. Hey, Mr. Nadir, my view is that the two judges erred when they ruled in favor of the government. And let me just go over some of the basic things as a member of parliament that we learned. We learned that majority, unless specified in an act, in a law, a majority is greater than. Has nothing to do about with 50% plus one and rounding up and adding. Majority is very simple in parliament. A majority is greater than. Now there are two Hi, good evening. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. You're on the air.
I want you to understand this thing. How I understand it, in propaganda and no confident vote,
Mm-hmm.
instead of 33, they got to be 34 votes. This is how I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
You know 33 would be the majority.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of how I understand it, for a no confident vote, they would have to get 34.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I understand it.
Okay. So that caller says his understanding is 34. That seems to be the understanding of the two judges. But give me 5 minutes for me to share with you this old man's experience with what a majority is. Good? Sat in parliament for over 23 years. Been running youth parliaments since 1983. I've been running youth parliaments in the Caribbean, all the way from Bermuda to Guyana. And normally our delegations come from over 24 countries. A majority is, in parliamentary language, greater than. Now, one famous lawyer in Guyana came up with this story that it has to be 34, and gave this issue of 65 divided by 2 equals to 32.5. You round it up and you add 1. And he cited 2 examples of this. One example he cited was somewhere in Turks, somewhere in the Caribbean. And the other was somewhere in the Pacific region. These 2 judges in these 2 tiny countries, and let me not knock tininess, because as I've said earlier in another program, look at St. Lucia, less than 1/5 the population of Guyana. They produced 2 Nobel Prize winners, Sir Arthur Lewis, Nobel Economics Prize winner, and Derek Walcott. But here are my 2 examples for you. Margaret Thatcher, England. England is the mother of modern democracy. The cradle of what we call Westminster democracy, because Westminster is the British Parliament. The cradle of Westminster, of course, it has to be England. This is where this thing grew up. The thick book of parliamentary language that the entire world follows is a Bible called Erskine Maze, right? And that has everything in it. But when you come to a country's constitution, along with the rule book of parliament, the rule book of parliament is called the standing orders, right? So we have the constitution and we have the rule book. So England, Margaret Thatcher brought a motion, I think it was in the 70s, 1979 it may have been, in January. And she brought a motion against the then Prime Minister James Callaghan, a no confidence motion. And they both read in parliamentary language in conjunction. It could be a no confidence motion or a vote of confidence. They're two sides of the same coin. Thatcher brought the no confidence motion against James Callaghan. And the motion succeeded by a vote of 311 in favor of the no confidence as against 310. So in England, the mother of Westminster Parliament, a majority was seen as one single vote. They didn't talk about absolute. They didn't talk about simple. They didn't talk about a majority of 5 seats or more. It was what is greater than. And I want to bring you another example. India, 1.5 billion people. Then in 1999, I think it was April the 17th, there was a confidence motion brought by the then BJP party in office. They had coalitions with some smaller parties. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, I think it's VAJ, maybe pronounced Vajpayee, not too versed in Hindi, right? And 17th of April, 1999, the Vajpayee government fell in a vote of confidence. You know what was the score? 270 against the vote of confidence and 269 in favor of the vote of confidence. One single vote. And this is the largest democracy in the world. 950 million people will be voting shortly in India. The largest democracy in the world. A government fell by one single vote. The mother of Westminster democracy, the United Kingdom, England. I don't know the distinction between the two, and I want to ask the British High Commissioner for his tolerance. I think there is England, which is like Essequibo, and then there is Great Britain, which might include Scotland and Wales. Then there's a United Kingdom, which might include England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, I think, right? So this government, the mother of Westminster democracy, lost one seat, a government lost by, in a no confidence motion. And in India, the largest democracy in the world, the largest democracy, the Vajpayee government in 1979 fell by one single vote. Now, I didn't see anybody going to court in England or in India. And we're talking of a population of over 1.2 billion people, voting population in these two countries alone. You know. So when we go out there and argue this majority, I want to let you use those two examples. I know I asked for 5 minutes, but give me another 5. I want to explain our own system. In our own system, there is no description other than majority, meaning greater than. all in the 23 years I've been in Parliament, we always dealt with anything over the other. And so, I can't see a no confidence motion being more special than any other motion. The Constitution says a majority of all, and I beg your indulgence, scholars and persons on the WhatsApp. I beg your indulgence. The Constitution speaks of a no confidence motion having a majority of all elected members. So, in my view, the no confidence motion sets 33 as the minimum number that must be achieved for a no confidence motion to succeed, which happened on the 21st of December. No amount of legal mathematics can change that. The second issue was when a number is specified in terms of changing the Constitution requires 2/3 of the elected members, which will amount to 4-4. I consulted all over, right, in looking at this whole issue of adding 0.5. And in one encyclopedia it says it is erroneous, wrong, to impute majority means 50% plus 1. And they say that if you are going to divide by 2 and up the fraction and add 1, the same way you can down the fraction and add 1. And what they said is, and makes perfect mathematical sense, to get a majority, forget the fraction and add 1. Forget the fraction, just add 1. And so people are saying, how are we going to get 66 seats? 34, and the other side got 32. But you drop the fraction and add 1. I used to be very infamous because I got into Parliament by a fraction, right? All the others got dropped and their votes went to me. I had the largest fraction. It's a bit different. When it comes to sitting and voting, it's always been greater than. And so in 2011, the coalition, AFC APNU, they voted down all the budgets, 33, 32. The coalition elected Raphael Trotman Speaker, 33, 32. That's very important. They even took the deputy speaker, which normally goes to the opposition. If one party gets a speaker, the other party gets the deputy speaker. They took all two by a vote of 33 to 32. They took the chairmanship of every single committee by a vote of 33 to 32. The no confidence motion is no different. The number is specified in the Constitution, and our rule book in Parliament says voting shall be determined by majority. It says you can vote by acclamation, the ayes have it, the nays have it, and if a division is called, that's what we had that night. If a division is called, a division means that every single member has to shout how they're voting. And we heard the famous yes from Mr. Charan Das Prasad. And then when asked to repeat, he said yes, yes, yes. How brave of him, in spite of all the threats. So I wanted to bring that to you. The two largest democracies in the world, they had their governments falling by one seat. One seat, their governments fell. And all over, votes are determined by majority. Majority means greater than, unless specified. It doesn't talk about a one-seat majority, a two-seat majority, a three-seat majority. If you want to change the Constitution, it says by how much. If you want
Enter remote
a no
access code.
confidence motion, it says you must have a majority of the elected members, 33. Nothing else. And that was achieved. It behoves the intelligence of you and I how this 34 came. Francis Alexis is a brilliant constitutional lawyer, right? So it seems it's not who arguing the case, it's not about the principle of the case, it's who arguing the case. And so we have now this matter going to the CCJ. So I've had a bit of say, and we're just going to have 15 more minutes. I promise to shut my mouth and give you an opportunity to speak. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, good evening. You're on the air.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Nadir. I'm asking one question. If when Parliament went between 32, 33, and the APNU ASC had got 33 seats guaranteed, would it still have come to where we're at present?
I would firmly say no. They would have been thumping and shouting and rejoicing.
Good, but how is it that when there is an opposition now collecting at 33 to 32, they are fighting and saying that they can't make it?
I think all of us knows the answer to that question, and I will say there's a song, "Slip Sliding Away." We should play that. Play that. Hi, good evening. Go ahead. You're on the air.
My problem with it is that the Parliament part shows a face where everyone is fighting against one another.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, everybody still sits, gasps, and eats from one plate.
Mm-hmm.
And when done, they make everybody else feel that they have to fight against one another, which means that it's Afro-Guyanese against Indo-Guyanese. Now, that is my part. I am an Indo-Guyanese.
Mm-hmm.
I have friends which are Afro-Guyanese.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still trying to figure out why is it that they are trying to divide the country,
Mm-hmm.
what they're doing with.
Okay. Well, let me just make a comment on that part, right? There is something called civility. And not because I have a different opinion of yours means I can't talk to you. Because dialogue is and must always be the first instant of settling differences. Civility.
Right, I understand the part.
Right. So, yes, we sit down and, it's not a matter of hugging up and kissing up and saying, forget about the plebites, right? You have to sit in the same common area. You will say hello. Of course, if somebody make a common joke, you might laugh. But it's not what some people feel. Okay? Thanks a lot. Take care.
Enter remote.
Hi, good evening. You're on the air.
Manzoor, good evening. How are you doing?
Quite well, sir.
Something I don't understand. There is 65 seats, right?
Mm-hmm.
They had 32 votes,
Mm-hmm.
and the opposition had 33 votes.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they dividing 65 by 2 to
Mhm.
get 32 and a half?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't, because nowhere does a calculation of a majority entails that division adding up. Nowhere except in the minds of a few judges. Nowhere except in the minds of a few judges. And let me say, precedents, I think Nigel did raise the issue, and some of the lawyers of
They
two.
just compare a brainwave to
No, two judges.
people.
No, I wouldn't say a brainwave. There were two cases, but the cases were wrong there and then, and even now. Right? So, let me just get some of the WhatsApp messages. That should not be applicable to our constitution, since our parliament consists of an odd number. Exactly. In an odd number, you'll always have greater, that's one person. And then the second person says, but they're imputing that they all wasn't too well with the judges. Well, I can't repeat what that was about. Let's go back to the phone. Hi, good evening. You're on the air with a big question.
Hi, a very good evening to you.
Go ahead.
I have a contribution to make.
Go ahead.
And my contribution is first, ladies and as people, we first need to respect each other,
Mm-hmm.
and especially comes to leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Based upon the kind of act and attitude we actually show forth, we're influencing the young who will become one day the leader of the country.
Mm-hmm.
However, addressing the point now with a no confident motion, if you said, based upon the laws of the Constitution, that a majority means, you said
Mm-hmm.
that the majority meant, just repeat yourself on that, let me just address it. It meant, in my term or in my understanding, I figure a majority does not conclude as just one signifying as a single. Majority speaks of multiple number above a specific number.
Mm-hmm.
If we, oh yes, you use the term saying that a majority is greater than,
Mm-hmm.
and if we word greater, what does that define?
Mm-hmm.
Greater means multiple.
No, it
cannot
doesn't. You're absolutely wrong, and I can't accept that. Not in my language.
Excuse me?
Not in my language. Greater doesn't mean multiple. Okay?
What I'm saying, you said greater means
More than.
more than.
Right. 7 is greater than 6. 8 is greater than 7. 9 is greater than 8. 33 is greater than
No,
32.
to you, give me a definition for the term being used greater, not just great, but greater. Have you ever checked on the definition for greater
Yes?
and what you conclude with that?
More than.
It has to be double.
No, it doesn't.
Double the amount of.
So we're going to argue forever, but clearly you learn mathematics in a school where the judges learn mathematics, not me. So I wouldn't continue that. And I wouldn't insult the intelligence of some of the other viewers and listeners. Hi, good evening. You're on the air with a big question.
Good evening, Mr. Nadir. How are you doing?
Not too bad.
I believe the whole thing about 33 and 32 is they create a confusion for the people, for the government to stay longer in Parliament.
Good.
And the ruling at the court, I don't believe that's a ruling. A ruling is supposed to be based upon the merit of the story.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that was a decision that they was asked to hand down
Okay.
by the government.
Well, okay.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
thanks a lot. Well, we can speculate, but let's deal a little bit with the reality and the what you call it, the understanding of any ordinary person. In fact, I had a friend who came to the country. They're very generous, and they give hundreds of millions of dollars to this country every year. And he said, Mr. Nadir, if I bring my 8 and 7-year-old kids here and I ask them which is greater, 33 or 32, right? They would be able to give us an answer. And I shudder because we have people writing common entrance in a couple of weeks' time. What are we telling these kids? What will happen? I would like to see the multiple answers that are correct in papers that talk about greater number. Let's take another caller. Hi, good evening. You're on the air with a big question.
Hi there, good evening.
Good evening.
I've never, oops, I got a teeth too high. I've never seen anything so ridiculous in my life.
Mm-hmm.
As for those two judges, I think they show their true colors. They're supposed to be neutral.
Mm-hmm.
How can 34 be? I don't understand this whole thing. I have some friends at a radio station in North America. We'll have a field day with this whole thing, and I'm sure the world is laughing at us.
Mm-hmm.
How can these people think 34 is half of 65? I don't understand it. You were right.
Don't try to understand. You will get angry and you wouldn't sleep, right? Good night. Let me
I
take
do
you.
have a cold.
Hi, good evening. You're on the air with a big question.
Hello, Mr. Nadir.
Good evening.
I want to say something.
Go ahead.
I want you all to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Why is we making a whole set of noise concerning the 34? when we know that that vote was never a conscious vote? Why is it election is coming out another year, just 2002? Why is it the PPP could not have waited when they had a struggle 33 years? They have killed a lot of us. They have committed a lot of tragedy in this country. They killed a lot of black people. The corruption, the murder. But what did government have done that we need that they have to vote a no confidence vote? We got to get ourselves together, man.
Good, thank you. Okay, so the person asked the question, what has this government has done? This government knocked off 2,000 persons from the interior. They put on the breadline 10,000 people directly. They've mismanaged the economy. They've put 200 taxes on people. Charandas, who comes from Berbice, who promised the people better wages for sugar workers, better prices for rice farmers, Charandas and the AFC. And he said when he came out, after the government did all this to the people who voted for him, because remember, almost 15% of the people of West Berbice, East Berbice voted for the coalition. And he says when he comes out and look at his backyard, he sees the children can't go to school, the squalor, the poverty, because there is no money, right? And let me say to that caller too, just as the government had a right to go to court, it's the right of any parliamentarian and every parliamentarian to move any motion. That's democracy at work. That's democracy at work. And all that His Excellency President Jagdeo said, there should be a conscience vote for everybody. It should be a conscience vote. There was a conscience vote on the issue of abortion. And President Jagdeo, leader of the opposition, said, let this be a conscience vote. And Mr. Charandas probably consulted his conscience and the experiences he saw in the field, which went against, he said, what he campaigned for. So when we talk about Lowry government, that's an active democracy. In an active democracy, you have a right to raise concern. Theresa May in England, fighting for survival, her own people sent a petition to her backbenchers, and said, hey, we are supporting, the government lost the Brexit vote so long ago and you can't pull out yet. So that's a right, caller. That's a right for every parliamentarian to speak up. Parliamentarians are not supposed to be robots, whips, would whip us into shape. I'll take one caller, and I know we had a really active. Okay. Hi, good evening. You're on the air.
Good evening, Manzoor.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want, I'm not a lawyer, I am not a judge, but if you got 33 and I got 32, you win me?
Of course.
All right, that is one. Two, I just want to let the public know, Wednesday afternoon and AFC had a rally at Coffee Square.
Right.
Telling them about giving them house lot and these things.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm talking about. I just want the people them to know, all of them who they promised them house lot, they lied to those people. The reason for it, they call a place name Metamirzarg. And they have house lot at Metamirzarg to give them, which is a total lie. You're telling Metamirzarg have no place. All taking up already.
Okay.
For a number of
Okay, well, I'm going to have to cut you there, right? Operator's signaling me that it's time and I have to wind down. This is the first edition of a new program every Friday evening at 10:30 to 11:30 is coming to you, hosted by yours truly and live from the studios of MTV. It's called Hold No Bars. You say it as you see it. And so tonight we had a very active program. Apparently I didn't know how to use the phone. So we had like 47 callers on one phone and a whole. Hi, good evening. I give you the last say.
Hello.
A quick one. Go ahead.
Thank you. No for my kind of time to time G not fight.
Right.
Them are hungry.
Okay, so this issue is, let's be a little bit serious, being on a call, peoples. If a person is hungry, there must be a reason and we should be sympathetic, right? So let's don't get into that type of name calling. But tonight, we had a great program, Hold No Bars. It's going to come to you every Friday evening on MTV. And from all of us here, our operator, myself, all the directors, the views tonight are those of yours and mine, and not necessarily those of MTV. But we're going to be back here next week with you, and let's keep it informed and let's keep it hot. Thank you very much, and good night.